Undeclared wars are commonplace. Tragically, our government engages in preemptive war, otherwise known as aggression, with no complaints from the American people. Sadly, we have become accustomed to living with the illegitimate use of force by government. To develop a truly free society, the issue of initiating force must be understood and rejected.
What if sometimes, to love your country, you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Thursday, February 19th, 2026. Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson joins us now. Colonel Larry, welcome, my dear friend. As always, thank you for accommodating my schedule. I want to talk to you about what we expect to be happening in Iran. But before we do, some questions that I think are interesting about Russia. There are reports in the media emanating out of France. Colonel McGregor says they're worth taking a look at and probably true, that U.S. fighter pilots and U.S. jets are patrolling the skies over Kyiv, and their mission is to shoot down Russian drones. Do you know anything about this?
No, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me that it's not being broadcast or the American people don't know about it, and it wouldn't surprise me that it's happening.
And what happens if one of those jets with several pilots in it is shot down?
Judge, look at what we're looking at right now if Trump goes ahead with his decision in Iran. I mean, we have the prospect for the Chinese and the Russians to say, we're escorting tankers. You attack us, you attack our sovereignty and our country. We're walking into so many blind alleys that are potentially devastating for us that it's hard to consider that we are led in any way, fashion, or form that's strategic, positively strategic anyway, and in our interest. That's the flat truth of it.
All right, I have a few more questions about Russia, and then we'll dive into Iran. The negotiations for peace involving the two real estate agents that represent the United States only lasted for 2 hours in Geneva on Tuesday. If we know that American fighter pilots are over Kyiv shooting down or there to shoot down Russian drones, the Russians know it. So how do they give credibility to a mediator whose country is attacking their military?
Same way they did to a mediator who is doing diplomacy with them while the Israelis kill many of their leadership. It's absurd. Let me back up for a moment. I watched John Mearsheimer on your show, and I agree with just about every word John said. That's rare with me and John, but I do. But let me back up and give some background here. You remember back in 2022, I think it was February, when the alleged deal was about to be inked or was inked, according to some stories, and Boris Johnson or someone intervened and got Zelensky to back out.
Yes.
That's a preposterous example to bring up as a missed opportunity, in my view. And that's why I'm talking about it. What would have happened if that had been inked is that we would have been at war anyway within 6 to 8 months, because there's no way on earth that London and Washington and Brussels and Kyiv and Zelensky would not have used that opportunity to continue to doing precisely what they were doing, getting more and more prepared to bleed Russia, and then bled Russia. It might have started with guerrillas in the territories, which was, as you well know, going on beforehand, very much one-sided with regard to the use of force on the side of Ukraine. It wouldn't have done anything except postpone by 6 to 8 months what was going to be inevitable anyway, which was that Putin had to mount the special military operation in order to teach us and all our allies and friends a lesson about what we can do in his near abroad, his sphere of influence, and what we can't do.
Colonel, you are saying that Washington, London, Paris, Berlin, and Brussels are not worthy of belief.
Bingo. Bingo. And it started it didn't start in 2014. It started well before that, even during my administration. But it certainly started in 2014 when everything was just poppycock. You know, that wasn't any real protests on the Maidan. That was the starting of a coup. And it was the starting of the American backing of Ukraine in its attempt to bleed Russia in order to get to China. And it isn't going to stop. It is not going to stop. Best we're going to do. Russia has the provinces now that it wants, or at least most of them, and it has Crimea. Now it's going to peel off that line with enough forces concentrated when the ground hardens, and it's going to go on down and finish with Odessa. And then it's going to look at a rump Ukraine that can't hardly survive. The EU wouldn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. NATO will not even contemplate as a member if NATO's even still together. NATO and the EU are going to begin and commence and start and finish falling apart. And, you know, nothing's going to be accomplished. And Russia's going to sit there and say, we're prepared to deal with your guerrillas however they come and whenever they come. Just don't let it get too big or we'll go to war.
Wow.
That's where we're headed. I think that's essentially what John was saying.
Right. The 2-hour meeting in Geneva was joined by two very senior Russian officials, bilingual and profound respect in the diplomatic world. Vladimir Medinsky is one of President Putin's senior advisors, and Mikhail Galuzhin is a deputy foreign minister, as if to express their opinion of the credibility and ignorance of Witkoff and Kushner. On the other hand, this thing only lasted for 2 hours. It's hard for me to believe that the Russians can trust the Americans with anything. They obviously believe that there was some kind of a handshake deal in Anchorage and now are furious that the deal never came to pass. They know that the CIA was involved in the attempts to either murder President Putin or destroy his home in the country, which included a lot of control equipment for nuclear facilities. Why would they believe a word out of Kushner or Witkoff's mouths?
Bingo. And I think what we're looking at now is Lavrov and Putin are quintessential believers in diplomacy. And they're going to keep this going simply because of that. But they have no faith whatsoever in it producing anything positive.
All right. To Iran, how large, how magnificent, how powerful, or how bloated, or whatever word you want to use, Colonel, is the, using the president's word, armada that has assembled around Iran?
I think the operative question here, the question of the hour, if you will, is just what is Donald Trump going to do with the position he's in between a rock and the hard place? The rock being Bibi Netanyahu, Miriam Adelson, and others like her, and the whole prospect of the Jewish lobby, or the Israeli lobby, as John correctly likes to call it. And the hard place being Iran and Russia and China, who are growing more and more close to the situation than I thought they would at this particular juncture, even to the point where I think the Chinese right now are contemplating something in reverse or prototyped by us. When we, at the last stages of the Iran-Iraq war, we actually did Operation Earnest Will, which was essentially reflagging Kuwaiti tankers progressing through the Strait of Hormuz and out into the Arabian Sea. We reflagged them with U.S. flags, and we escorted them. Now, Bridgerton, a big merchant, hit a mine, and its captain and its company was really angry with us because we didn't do a very good job. And these were just small mines, not like the mines Iran has now. But if China and Russia, or just one of them, but imagine if both of them did it, said we're reflagging all of the tankers headed for China, for example, or anywhere that was in their interest for the tankers to go, and you take them on at the peril of starting a war with us, and just let it go at that and begin to escort them with their warships. They have warships in the area, in the vicinity. One Russian ship apparently has arrived on the southern coast of Iran. This is fraught with not just Iran, which is formidable enough. There's no way we're going to beat that 90 million person nation in a way that allows us to dictate to them. No way on earth. But you throw Russia and China into it, you have a whole new ballgame.
China. Now, I can't envision how much oil this is in a tanker, so I don't know how many tankers are involved. You may know this. China imports from Iran 1.4 million barrels of oil a day.
Yeah.
Well, how many ships is that?
And much more than that from Iraq. Iraq's chief partner, the last time I checked with Gary and the oil people, Iraq's chief partner in terms of a single state buying a percentage of oil is China.
Here's Hormuz, Colonel, today.
Yep. It looks a lot like during Operation Earth's Will.
Well, no, I don't know whose ships are which. This is from Iranian TV called Press TV. You're probably familiar with it.
Yes. I'd have to get closer to see the silhouette.
Yeah.
They're not.
But we're obviously talking about a lot of tankers that the Chinese want to be able to make it to China.
Absolutely.
To deliver 1.4 million barrels a day.
And I think that's just the figure from Iran. The figure from Iraq is much more than that.
Wow.
We're talking about 20 to 25% of Iraq's oil. And Judge, Iraq has finally gotten its act together. It's pushing Saudi Arabia right now in terms of quantities shipped. And at least 20 to 25% of that oil is going to China.
Have you concluded from your own observations or whatever private personal sources you have that you, without revealing the sources, of course, that President Trump has decided to attack Iran, and it's just a question of when? McGregor reminded us, and I forgot about this, that Tuesday night is the State of the Union address. He probably doesn't want to upstage himself.
Right. It's passing strange what's going on. I really think Trump wants a deal. And I think he actually believes that this force and its display so ostentatiously is going to, at the end of the day, which is why he keeps extending it in real terms, force a deal that he can sell. I don't think he understands how intractable Bibi is, and probably those people who are supporting Bibi. So I would look for it to unfold not in some precise tactical surprise attack on Iran, but rather an Israeli attack that Trump reluctantly has to follow. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but I would say that might happen because I do think Trump wants a deal. I'll give him that.
Suppose Trump walks onto the floor of the House of Representatives on Tuesday night and waves a piece of paper saying, President Pezeshkian and I have signed this. There's no uranium enrichment in Iran. We're gradually going to let up on the sanctions. Our countries are at peace. And Bibi doesn't like it.
That would be very interesting. That would show me that the president has a lot of moxie I don't think he has. That would be a triumph for Trump, I think. I really do.
And what can Bibi do? Get Mrs. Adelson and her folks to pressure the president to support a war that Israel will start, just like it started the one in June, and then begged that it end because they didn't expect the fusillade that came back at them.
Oh, that's a difficult thing to ascertain. Will Netanyahu, in a fit of pique, go ahead and start it anyway with a nuclear weapon to back him up?
How easily can a war become escalated and totally out of bounds?
too easily, too easily. I could see it happening if.
And think about the Turks as you give this answer.
But if Trump were convinced by his advisors, such as they are, that Israel was going down as a state, and that Netanyahu might be contemplating using a nuclear weapon, or indeed was in fact contemplating it and letting Trump know as a threat, I wouldn't want to be in his shoes to decide what I was going to do at that point, because no matter the diplomatic triumph at that point, and even if he had announced it, it would be very difficult to stand up to that pressure.
Do you think Turkey will become involved? And actually, before you...
Turkey is a enigmatic factor in this, because Erdogan has been all over the map, and trying to figure out where he's going and what his true interests are, especially with his imperial political position, is almost impossible. I defy people who say they can figure out where he's going.
Chris, I can't find it on my sheet, but I know you have it. Naftali Bennett, the former chief of staff of Benjamin Netanyahu, who ousted him, became prime minister, and then was ousted back by Netanyahu. Here's what he said 2 days ago about Turkey.
I want to be very clear. Turkey and Qatar have gained influence in Syria, are seeking influence elsewhere and everywhere throughout the region. And from here, I warn, Turkey is the new Iran. Erdogan is sophisticated, dangerous, and he seeks to encircle Israel. We can't close our eyes again. And while some senior Israelis were on Qatar's payroll, Qatar and Turkey are nourishing the Islamic Brotherhood monster that is growing and eventually might become as dangerous as the one created by Iran. Turkey and Qatar are gaining influence not only in Syria, but also in Gaza, through the front door, and everywhere, and trying to create a new choke ring. Turkey is trying to flip Saudi Arabia against us and establish a hostile Sunni axis with nuclear Pakistan.
Judge, I was just thinking yesterday, if we were successful in some way, diplomatically or, God forbid, militarily with regard to Iran, who would be Israel's next target? Because they aren't going to stop. He just told me.
Wow. How sophisticated is the Turkish military, and what capabilities does it have to deliver devastating blows to the Israelis?
It depends on whether or not the United States, again, is 100% behind the Israelis.
Man, do Hegseth and Rubio and Trump, or whoever's advising Trump, have any idea what they might be getting us involved in?
Hegseth is too busy establishing Christianity as the religion of the Pentagon in the United States.
I saw that. It just as an aside, is he respected by senior military?
It depends on what you mean by senior. If you're talking about the chairman and a few of the flags.
No, not that level.
If you're talking about the
colonels, lieutenant colonels, people that would be working with the grunts in a war.
Scare him. They frighten him.
They frighten him.
Well, yes, in that sense, but he frightens them too. They both are living in what I would call an atmosphere of tenterhooks, walking
Listen,
around.
you know that I'm an old-fashioned pre-Vatican II Roman Catholic, but the idea of forcing any religion on the military, aside from its violation of the First Amendment, is just not what the military is there for.
Bingo. There's a reason George Washington and other very formidable constitutional members, if you will, when we were putting the Constitution together, forbade a prayer at the beginning of each section, much to Benjamin Franklin's chagrin, because he was the one proposing it. But they refused to have religion in that way be a part of their discussions about the Constitution.
How likely is the United States to say no to Israel? I guess the answer is going to be 0.
I keep hoping for some courage somewhere, and the dynamic is shifting in the country. It's just not shifting fast enough to make real pressure on a president like Trump or on the people in his administration, many of whom are, just short of being Mossad members in terms of their beliefs.
What would be accomplished by an attack on Iran? What for the United States would be accomplished by an attack on Iran?
Negatively speaking, I think we'd be mired there for years to come if we had any success at all. There is a real chance that we won't even get to be mired because we will be so roundly sent on our way, if you will, by Iran in the opening skirmishes.
I asked this of Colonel McGregor, and I'll ask it of you, even though this is more my field than yours or your colleagues. This is an invasion. Shouldn't there be a debate on the floor of the House of Representatives and the Senate? And shouldn't Congress be asked to authorize this or not to authorize it?
And look at how weak the movement is right now with people like Ro Khanna, the Democrat, behind it, and I think Tom Massey's behind it too, to use the War Powers Resolution or some more expeditious measure to get a vote in the House and the Senate and get some legislation passed that at least says to the president, you have to do this and you have to do this in order to start this war. No one's going to pass that legislation because the Republicans still have a lock. And even if they did pass it, it would be by such a small majority that we'd be just like we were with the legislation we got passed in both houses with getting us out of the war in Yemen as Saudi Arabia's ally. Trump would veto it, as he did in the first administration.
Well,
we're locked into a certain extent. We're locked into the fabric the founders left us with no comprehension, except maybe Jefferson and Adams once they'd reconciled. If you read their letters, there's between one another. They died on the same day. There's some comprehension in both men's minds of what they've done with regard to the people and the people getting out of hand in terms of not managing and monitoring and taking care of their republic. And they don't, if you read it closely, they don't give us more than a few years.
Yeah.
And their real problem, of course, they knew, and Jefferson knew most vividly of all, he was a slave owner after all. The slavery was something a poison pill they put in the Constitution. So I think his grave concern was about that. Well, we handled that 1861 to 1865. But there are other problems, and you find those problems enumerated in these letters. And part of the problems are that you look at when Caesar was assassinated and Augustus took over, the Roman Republic ended and an empire took over. Ours isn't going to be that fast. Ours has been incremental, but that's where we're headed. We're headed to the same place. Trump is not Augustus by any means, but he damn well might be Caligula or Nero or someone like that in the long term. And I'm laughing. I don't really mean to be laughing, but we're transitioning right now in front of our eyes, and the people are oblivious for the most part.
Freedom is not lost overnight. Here's James Madison, if I can pull it up. Freedom has more often been lost in small steps by progressive incrementalism than it has been by catastrophic upheavals such as violence or war.
Yes.
Colonel, we may need you sooner than your usual time. God only knows what might happen over the weekend. I tend to think Colonel McGregor, who has a good read on President Trump's mind, believes that it wouldn't happen until after the State of the Union, because Trump knows how much attention that State of the Union gets.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll ask you this. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to reveal anything, but does Doug feel the same way about Trump being conflicted over the war?
I don't. Yes, I think he does.
Yeah.
I think he does. I think he thinks that Trump really wants peace, but he knows his Israeli, I could say masters, I could say colleagues, I could say supporters, fill in the blank, will not allow it.
Yeah. He knows Trump better than I.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. There's that quote from Madison. Freedom has more often been lost in small steps by progressive incrementalism than it has been by catastrophic upheavals such as violence or war.
And no doubt Madison was thinking foremost there about that progression from the Republic, Roman Republic, about which we don't really know that much. We know a great deal about the empire, the imperial period, but that progression from the Republic to Caesar crossing the Rubicon, coming into the Senate, even though he'd been warned multiple times, and being assassinated and putting the Republic at war with itself to produce Augustus and everything afterwards.
Look, Madison wrote the Constitution. Madison was in the House of Representatives. After 3 years of watching what the House of Representatives and the Senate tried to do, he said, you know what? We need a Bill of Rights. The government has to be restrained.
Bingo.
Have those restraints worked, Colonel? Sadly,
Well,
no.
for a while.
For a while they did.
You know, in the history of nations, it's really a pretty long time we've survived.
Yeah. Will we make it to 250, which theoretically, it's hard to say when we began, but theoretically is this July 4. Colonel, thank you very much, my dear friend. As I said, we may be calling on you sooner rather than your usual time if you're available to us. All the best.
You too. You too.
Thank you. If you're watching us live, we're coming back in just 20 minutes. Pepe Escobar at 2:45 this afternoon on Don't Expect Russia and China to sit still and watch this war unfold and not do anything about it. And at 3:30, why did the Netanyahu regime detain Tucker Carlson and his staff after they finished interviewing Ambassador Huckabee? Might it be that the ambassador didn't like the questions? Max Blumenthal, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.